right now.
What?
It's near Munich, is where he
Nuremberg.
lives. Yeah, Nuremberg.
Oh.
There it is.
I had nothing to do with Germany. I was not born in
Right.
Germany. I was born in Czechoslovakia, and it used to was Austria.
Oh, okay. Did you live there your whole life?
Huh?
Did you live there your whole life? Or?
No, I moved to Austria from Czechoslovakia. But that I would have to tell you
It's a long story.
a long story, kind of. My parents were born in Austria. If you heard about that Austrian-American, Austrian-German monarchy,
Mm-hmm.
Austrian-Hungarian monarchy. And then after the First World War, it was all broken up. That part of where I was born, that used to belong to Austria. But then Austria and Germany, they reunited.
To the
And
Anschluss.
Anschluss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
the Anschluss, yeah.
were you there for
go.
that? Did you see that
That's
happen? Wow.
Were you?
So then it was Austria was actually German too.
Right.
Were you living in Austria when that happened?
When it happened what?
When the Anschluss happened?
Yeah, then I was in No, I was in Czechoslovakia
Oh, okay. So you moved to Austria after?
after the war. I had applied for citizenship to be in Austria. I actually was a refugee from Czechoslovakia and
Oh.
Austria. That's a little complicated for you to grasp with that thing.
I remember last time I came over, I remember you telling us you lived on the border of Czechoslovakia and Austria.
Well, that's right.
Mhm.
That's right. That it was close to the border. Actually, it's right on the border. Kaplitz was the border station. Going the other way from Kaplitz was Czechoslovakia, and this way it was Austria. And that's where from Czechoslovakia came to
Oh, you just-
Austria
Oh, I see.
as a refugee. Because my part was given to the Czechs.
So when did you come to Austria? So was it after
After
the war?
After the war,
I see. So before that you lived in Czechoslovakia?
right.
I see.
And when you were in the war, you were stationed in
Austria.
in Austria.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
What town were you near when you were in the war?
Linz.
Linz? Oh, Linz, Austria. Is that where the chocolates are made?
I think so.
I think so.
The chocolates are made all over.
The chocolate.
It was about an hour's train ride from the borderline from Czechoslovakia.
And so what did you do there? You said you were just a helper for the...
There I
Luftwaffe,
was on construction. I applied for the citizenship to get on the railroad. Because the railroad job was a government job.
Oh.
So I replied, but then I was an Austrian citizen, and I got a job on the railroad where I worked on for 5 years. And there, then I met my wife, and they had some papers going to the States, and so I got over here through my in-laws. We got in contact with each other, and I gave my job up then, and we moved.
Oh, wow.
Did you
It's-
did you still work construction when you moved to the U.S.?
No, no. I started right in a factory
What kind
in
of factory?
Milwaukee.
Oh, Milwaukee.
Yeah,
Oh.
Fall Corporation it was called. It was a big factory. It was a foundry and machine shop all together. It was a big factory. That's where I worked all my 30 years. I was
Wow.
very tired.
What did they make?
Gears,
Keys?
castings,
Gears,
Gears.
like gears.
So
mostly
cool company,
gears
yeah.
and
Bob.
Yeah, I used to sell Milwaukee drills.
I worked in
Oh.
maintenance
I love
department.
Milwaukee tools.
Really?
2 years I worked in the foundry as a core maker. And then, I got laid off for 2 months and then I got recalled. They hired me back again and then I was in construction again, maintenance department. Yeah, that's all I can tell.
So, Andrew, did he ever tell you about the syphilis story? That was my favorite story.
No, I never
Yeah, I
did.
never wrote that.
Dad, so one of my favorite stories is when your grandma, when the German soldiers came in, and your grandma said,
My
who was
my
that?
grandparents didn't live that time
No.
anymore.
Well, who's the one that said, I have syphilis, I have syphilis? Remember, she laid in bed so they wouldn't touch her?
Oh, that's why I remember my grandpa.
Who?
I was just a young,
Uh-huh,
I don't know how old I was, but I was very little yet.
uh-huh.
I just remember my grandpa laying in bed and he had emphysema, I guess. And he was on his way,
Mm-hmm.
past his life. So I don't remember very little about my grandfather.
Did you live with your
And
grandparents?
my grandmother, well, I know her a little better, but just not that much.
Right. Did you live near them, your grandparents, or did they?
Oh, they are long past already.
Well, when they were alive, did you live near them, or were they in a different spot?
Oh, we lost close to, yeah. They had a little farm where my mother was brought up.
Dad, but you told me a story, so I'm not making this up. Who was laying in bed?
My grandfather.
No, he didn't have syphilis. You said somebody was yelling, I've got syphilis, I've got syphilis. Somebody wanted to have sex with her. The soldiers came in. Was that Mom's family? You always told me that story. Did soldiers come in and want to take the house?
Oh, that was the Russians
the
when they came in.
Russians. Right.
Oh, that was my mother's sister.
Oh,
That was when the Russians came and they were raping the
women.
girls and all of when the Russians came in from the other side and they all were hiding around because the Russians were so.
They came into
vicious.
the house.
Well, my mother's sister, they laid in bed and when the Russians came, she said, "First, syphilis, She made him believe she had syphilis so that she wouldn't get raped.
But that was a great story.
That's a
That's
interesting
that
story.
story.
Find a way, yeah.
So the
I
Russians,
you know,
how old were you during that time when the Russians came?
Oh, that was after the war. When I was retired from the war, that was 1945.
Party mobile.
1945.
45, that must have been 46 then when the Russians, you know, came. The Americans from the West. First came the Russians came in first in our village, I remember. And then they pulled back, there was the railroad, and then they made the borderline, you know, the Americans pulled, the Russians pulled on this side of the railroad, and the Americans came then on this side. So we were under the Americans.
You ever meet any
Soldiers.
Americans?
Yeah, my sister even was dating a
Oh,
soldier.
Hi.
She was working
I'm Linda.
for the army.
Yeah.
When the
What is it?
oh, they met.
Americans came.
Oh, wow.
She knew a little English, and then they hired her on the switchboard,
They'll tell you.
and that's where she met
Have
a
seat.
guy.
There. That was
Hi.
comfortable.
That's where she met an American guy, and
No, either way.
he-
That one, that
he
one.
picked her up, taking her to work,
Did you
and
want coffee
brought
or
her
water
back
or
home.
anything?
Oh, I'm good, thank you.
Man can dream.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
How are you doing, Rudy? I met you last year. I'm not sure if you remember me. I'm Brennan.
He's the one you met. I was mistaken for
I
you.
got a hard time.
He was the one you met last time I was over here.
Yeah, you were. Oh, So I got you two mixed up here a little bit.
There you go.
Oh, I think you said.
huh. Yeah, the dark
Uh-huh.
hair. A lot of dark hair guys.
Well, a lot of guys with brown eyes too.
Brown eyes.
It's the Italian genes. Yeah,
Disgusting. I got a DNA test for Christmas.
I heard.
If I come out like 1% Italian, it's over, dude. It's over. And the whole racial policy's out the window.
51%.
No, this can't be.
That would make you more Italian than me.
That's such youngsters, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So 22, how old are you?
Same here.
22?
22.
Really? Oh my
Oh,
god.
no, you guys,
22.
22.
Oh my goodness.
Now I gotta think back when I was 22. That was a long time ago.
Hmm.
I'm 95 now.
Really?
Huh.
You're looking good for 25.
I'm hanging in here, so.
How do you live to be 95? What do you do?
No, yeah, it's a secret.
What's your secret
The
to living so long?
I don't know. I must have been something
Good.
doing right that I'm still alive.
Good heart.
Didn't overdo things,
Yeah.
you know? He's pretty mellow. Went to work, came home, relaxed, putzed around, you know, did like, so it wasn't overworking. You know, I think people overdo things.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Didn't drink much. No fast food. No fast food restaurants. But he does enjoy a McDonald's burger every once in a while.
Oh, yeah, McDonald's is pretty
European mind cannot comprehend.
I had my ups and downs in my.
Remember? I can't remember if I recall this, but did the Money Pennies take you to that Barbarian restaurant in Pensacola?
No.
I must have taken to someone else then.
Yeah.
And Erica's parents took her grandmother to the restaurant.
good. Oh, Bavaria?
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, apparently their grandmother was very, her grandmother.
You guys should come to Milwaukee for German Fest. Yeah, we usually work there. Well, he doesn't. But my mom and I still work there in the Schnitzel House. Give you all free schnitzel when you
Oh,
go.
that'd be nice.
When is that?
Always the last weekend in July. The last
I'll be-
full weekend in July.
I'll be coming back from Europe then.
Mm.
You'll have real schnitzel then.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna become fat.
You know, after
Strudel and
said
schnitzel.
after that Anschluss, that was, I considered myself almost like a German,
Really?
you know, but I actually was not a German. I was an Austrian, you know, before the First World War, it was Austria, and that's where my parents was born.
Yeah, a lot of Austrians identified
But,
in Germany.
We all were for Hitler, you know. We trusted him and we thought he's the greatest. You know, he considered him that he liberated us from the Czechs because it got to be German again. So that's a little, maybe you get a little idea about what's going on.
When did you join the Hitler Youth?
When I joined the Hitler Youth? Well, when Hitler came and liberated us, you know, then we were Germans. They did an Anschluss, we considered us German. And the Hitler Youth were just an organization, like here the Boy Scouts. So that's how we considered us. But it was actually quite different. It was more like young soldiers,
Boy
you
Scouts?
know.
Did you ever go on like, what was it like in the Hitler Youth? Like, what did you guys do?
See, Hitler Youth, we just had meetings.
Did you ever go on like camping trips?
Yeah, we did. I remember once there was, you know, the gang were away from home, and we lived in a tent. We had just like soldiers, like
Right.
How old were you?
that time when I was a Hitler Youth, 12 years. 28, yeah, about 10, 12 years.
Do you have any funny memories of? I hate to ask the question, but do you have any funny memories of being in the Hitler Youth?
I couldn't follow you now.
Do you have any funny memories of being in the Hitler Youth, like stories?
Oh, memories about Hitler Youth. Regrets I have. I don't know why, but it was just like I would say to belong to be the Hitler Youth. It was like I can't remember the right kind of word for it. Mandatory. Is, you know, belong. You had to be a Hitler Youth. I don't know why, but it was mandatory to join. You know, Hitler and work for him, and we all admired him, Hitler, because he came and liberated us at first. But Hitler, you know, he got kind of crazy and he was very successful, and he won all the battles, but he lost the war.
Yeah.
So to say. And we thought Germany's gonna win the war, you know, till to the last time. Until in Stalingrad, that's when it changed. Then the war, then the Germans got beat and they retreated, and that's how they.
Did you hear about Stalingrad when it happened?
Oh yeah,
You did?
oh yeah. We followed it very close always. They had on the radios we heard everything. Just there was a lot of propaganda going on. Too, every time they sank a boat, they were, making a big spiel out of it. Big. It's hard for me to.
Yeah.
But you get the message a little bit.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
It,
So,
Hitler changed, in other words. At first we believed him, but later on he got crazy like or something. And sometimes I think he like hypnotized us. The way he was talking and things, and he was just for the Germans. He was the greatest at
Mhm.
first. I don't know. If you didn't live at that time, it's hard
It was different.
to get to know you how we felt.
So you came
But,
from a village in Austria. Do you have did you know people who left for the war before you? Like any friends or anybody that joined the
again,
military?
Did you have any friends that did
If
join?
I got any friends,
Back then, did you have any friends that joined the war before you did?
they joined the war. Oh yeah, we were buddies. We were like a group of. When I was in the military, I was in the anti-aircraft and in the heavy guns, and we were at home station in Linz. They were bombing the Linz, and we were supposed to defend. So when the planes came and bombed, we were shooting at them with the 88 aircraft gun. That was the smallest from the big guns. There was about 2 or 3 more heavier guns than the 88. And that's where I was serving, the 88 gun. We were stationed usually on a hill or around the town, and we had practice, how to shoot us young guys. And we had to replace the older guys that did the work that a younger guy could do. So that's why we had to go, it had nothing to do with Hitler Youth or anything. It was just service, recruiting, like a grown-up man, Only the Hitler Youth is what the young guys. And like I said, I was I would have to start way back yet. If I guess you're
Absolutely,
interested.
absolutely.
So I'm gonna try and tell you my story. I'm very interested. Well, after the war, the First World War, my dad was 4 years in the service, was in Russia too. That's Ukrainian, and he told us stories, from his military. He was in the artillery, and he had a lot to do with horses and stuff. And he was an Austrian soldier, in the military. And then when they lost the war, it got separated, where my homeland on the borderline. That was Austria belonged to the monarchy. It was Austrian. And after the war, it got broken up. That part where my dad was born, it got the Czechs took over there. And, but we were still living there, you know. But the Czechs were the main, you know, country. Well, I should say the right one. And then he got married there after the war, and we were both born then, you know, in Czechoslovakia there was, and my dad found a job on the railroad, and it was a Czech government job, you know, and so, and he didn't know, he was lucky to get a job on the railroad, you know. He did a heavier work, he didn't have no big job or anything, but he worked on the tracks and replacing the rails and whatever, maintenance work. And that's what he did. And when Hitler came, no, well, I'm getting ahead of myself a little. Oh, when we were born, they told him, in that village now, there was the farmers, they were independent from the Czechs. You know, the Czechs and Germans didn't get along. To begin with, it was like oil and water mixing, you know. And the Czechs wanted to make Czechs out of the Germans that lived in that area. They built up a school, a Czech school, you know, but there was the old German school yet. The farmers, and they sent their kids in German school because they were Germans, you know, they didn't want to have anything to do with the Czechs. And there was now the Czechs, but like I said, they wanted to make Czechs out of the German. So my dad didn't like the Czechs, you know, but he's got a job on the
Railroad.
government. So they told him, if you want to keep your job, you have to send your kids in Czech school, you know. And so when I got old enough to start school, I didn't like to go to Czech school. My buddies I had, you know, my neighbors, they were all farmers like mostly, and my best friend, you know, were like buddies.
What was
He
his
went
name?
in German school, but I had to go in Czech school. I wanted to go in German school, of course. You know, who would, you know, if you put you in my shoes at that time, you wouldn't like, you didn't know Czech, the language or anything. And then you gotta go to school in the end. So I was all, you know, I was mad and angry and or whatever that I have to go to Czech school. And I was a little stubborn when I was a little guy. When I started to kindergarten in Czech school, my mother had to push me. I refused to go. So she had to push me to have me go. When she stopped wanting to go back, I started to go back to her. So until she had to push me all the way to the door until I was inside the school there. And then, but I got used to it, you know, and things. Then I felt okay. I learned Czech, you know, which I don't regret now. I know still Czech words a lot of. I couldn't keep a conversation in Czech, but I know a lot of words, and maybe some sentence I could say. So if you want want to see that what I know yet in Czech. If I tell you, I had to go 3 years to Czech school. In Czech, I would have to say, já chodil tu český školu 3 roky.
Sounds
I-
like from Star Wars.
Já chodil. It means I went. You know, I went.
Closer to Russian and like Eastern.
Yeah, it
languages
sounds
in
Balkan.
Yao
Very much.
Ukadi is like I go in Russian. Ukadil.
I can count till 10, you know. Jedna,
That was
dvě,
Russian?
tři, čtyři, pět, šest, sedm, osm, devět, deset.
Really close.
Huh. Dad, what was your friend's name when you were little? Your
My
best
best
friend?
friend,
Yeah,
Frank.
Frank.
Frank,
Little
yeah, he was a farmer's boy.
Yeah.
He was 2 years older than me.
Huh.
In Oblowitz, that was. By Kaplitz. This near Kaplitz. Kaplitz was the main town. That's where I went in high school. From things. Well, there's another story then. When I went to Czech school, when Hitler came, I had to change school from Czech to German. And there I was, you know, a newcomer. I didn't know any German reading or writing. I just started to learn that in Czech. So I had trouble following, you know, up in German. Because in school, in German school, you talked High German. And at home we had a different dialect that was sometimes quite different from, you know.
So the language they taught in the German school was different than what was known where you live.
Oh yeah,
Well, because you were more Austrian, right, Dad?
You were
at that time
Didn't you have more of
That
an
was-
Austrian accent? You were more Low German, and they taught in High German.
in school we had to talk High German.
High German. But at home, you were more Bavarian,
Uh,
right?
uh,
Or Austrian.
Austria.
More
Austrian.
Austrian dialect.
That was part of Austria, and different parts of Austria had different, like over here, a
Yeah.
dialect, you know.
Like in down south, they talk different than up
Yeah,
north.
but even worse yet. You know, they had different words what means the same thing. So at home, you know, so you can imagine when we would talk home and then I have to talk High German, I had no idea. And when the teacher was dictating and thing and we had to write, you know, and so I read it the way I heard it. And after it was examined, it was more red, where I make mistakes, than it was black, was what it's supposed to be. So I had difficult. My mother, they wanted me to go to school in high school, and I flunked the test to go to high school. So my mother gave me summertime, summer school, you know, lessons. I had to go to a teacher during the summer to write, to get a better German, you know, that is German reading and education.
Alright.
So then I got to, you know, they had to take me up in the high school, so I went in the first grade in German, and I did fairly good in the first grade. But my mother was not satisfied, and she made me to skip the second grade. I had to go from first to second grade because she was kind of worried, or why my mother, I'm getting too old, you know, or something. And she made me skip. She made the, the faculty or some things to skip second grade, and I was in third grade then, and then there I got lost again. But I pulled through, you know, but very difficult it was. And that's where I resented like going to school, you know.
His
So,
mom
but
was
I
raised
made
in
it to
the
fourth grade or fifth,
Francesca.
and that's where Hitler came then, and I got into the service, and I actually was glad to give up that, you know, education in school. I wanted to become a forest.
Forrester?
Forest ranger.
Oh.
Yeah, it was called in. Yeah, but then it's through the war. Then I had to go into service. Oh, I had a choice going to college. In the fifth grade, you know, to get that education and things, or finish the fifth high school, you know. Instead going to college, I could have finished the things to get into that profession. So I decided to finish the fifth grade yet, or the fourth or fifth grade it was. And that's where I then had to go into service, and it got broken up, you know, my college education or whatever. And then after the war, when I would think, what I'm gonna do now? That was a miserable time. And they told us when we got relief then, you know, from the service, we were supposed to, actually the girls replaced us then, like we replaced the old soldiers. And and then they took us off, and they told us when we get home we were supposed to go to the recruiting station and report us that we are out of the service, you know. And so, and I believe we had a physical, and the doctor set me back for not be able to be a soldier or to recruit. So I didn't report myself because I had an excuse if I would have found out, you know. But I was supposed to report myself anyway. If they would have found out, I would have been in big trouble. So when I got home, I was quiet, you know, that nobody knew that I'm back home from the service. And because the war was going bad already in Russia, and it was kind of, we knew already the war is going bad, you know. But you know, like the Germans, they had a big propaganda, and we even believed to the right think that Germany is gonna win the war yet. They always talked about weapons, you know, the new weapons they have and things, and that gets involved in that atomic bomb and things, and we didn't even know what that new weapon's supposed to be, but they started those wee rockets, you know, they were firing and to England. And that was the new weapons, you know. They were deadly and effective. They shot from France those rockets, and they had it set when they flew over London or so. Then they stopped and dropped down like a bomb, you know. Germans were bombing England. And well,
So, when you left high school to the service for the service, was everyone in your class supposed to go, or was it just specific people?
oh yeah, everybody was supposed to report themselves.
Did you get
I
to?
was lucky, you know, some of them guys, they reported themselves and they took them in the front. Like the older guys from me, the stronger guys. A friend of mine, I knew him, that was a mixed carriage, but he was a friend of mine. He had to go on the Russian front, and he got killed yet. And before he got killed yet, anyway, he got shot through the things. He was laying back somehow, and the things, and he got shot. He got wounded through the wrist. But then I don't know, did he get killed or not? He didn't come back anymore.
Did you keep in touch with any of your friends when they went off to? Did you keep in touch with your friends, like write letters or?
Not too well. I got lost contact with all my buddies that I was in the service with. They all got spread out then when they got home, you know. I had to get new friends when I went into the service, you know. There was no buddies from school that we went together into the service. But no, actually, from the same school, there was some guys that I went to school with. Oh, and he lived in the neighborhood, you know. But from school, they went to Kaplitz in high school from there, and they had to go to the service too. So I got to meet him then in the service, that he was from the same town and in the same high school, you know, he went to. That's how we served together in the military.
Do you know why they sent you to the anti-aircraft, or was it? Do you know why they sent you to the anti-aircraft?
Why?
Mhm.
Because we had to replace all the
Oh,
soldiers so they could take them in the front. Because Hitler ran out of short of men. You know, a lot of them got killed. And so to keep the war going, he replaced us, you know, to improve his strength, so to say.
How
He was determined to win too, you know.
how many people did you serve with where you were at?
Oh, that was a whole company. I would have to make a rough guess. There was 6 guns usually set up, sometimes in a circle or in a V shape. There was 6 guns, and on one gun there was about the first cannoneer or the first guy. What is the right name for it?
Sergeant?
Gunner. The first gunner was he moved the gun sideways, and then the one that was the gunner number 2. He moved the gun up and down, you know, and there was so there was the first gunner, and then the third gunner was in the back. He set the distance on the gun. There was a connection, you know, from the measuring station or the observation things. We got the measurements, you know, and we had a clock in front of it, and there was the radar, you know, picked up a target, and we got the measurements, so to say. On a clock, there was a a hand that moved, and there was another hand. When you turned the handle, that hand moved too, and we had a cover that moved automatic. You know, we had to turn it and keep it even with the hand, and then every 3 seconds it was well, that's 3 guys. There was the loading gunner, that the one who shot it, who pulled it off. So there was 4 guys, and then the guys who carried the ammunition to put it, in the gun. There was a thing that thing was that the nose. There was on the nose from the
Fuse?
ammunition, from the cartridge, and it was turning, and it set the difference, the timing, how far it's flying until it blows up. And he had that too, the same thing, and here was a hand where he got those measurements, to say, and so that's what we had to practice just about every day. We went to the guns and we were doing exercise like it would be the real thing.
Where did you stay at when you were in the service?
Around Linz, there was a big factory in Linz going on that made warm materials, and they were bombing Linz quite a bit. And that's where we were supposed to protect it.
When you were at your station, where did you live?
In a camp, like in barracks. We had barracks where we lived, and the guns were right outside on a hill. That was about from my home village where it was in Linz. It was about an hour's train ride from Umlowitz or Kaplitz to Linz, where I was stationed then. And we were around Linz on a hill usually, and so you were asking how many guys there were. So, I would say five guys were on a gun. So 6 times 5,
30.
that's about the amount. And then there was the officer, it was usually a lieutenant. He commanded the whole gang, a battery, or what would you call it?
Better. What was the food like?
For it,
The food.
food.
Mm-hmm.
At first it was plenty. We got plenty food. They put us whole buckets of marmalades in here and bread, and we even wasted a lot. Things we couldn't even eat as much as we got. But later on, boy, we were very hungry sometimes. We got we were maybe 5 or 6 guys in one barrack, and we had to share the food and what we got. We got a loaf of bread, and we had to cut it up so for everybody, a piece of sausage we had to call up for each guy, and black coffee we had. And that was about it for a whole day sometimes. That we got only one loaf, we got maybe 2 slices for the whole day, and a piece of sausage of that, and maybe a little slice of butter, whatever they had, And there was no kitchen or anything that made hot food, you know, we didn't have that at the end. I don't remember that anyway. So, that's the way I lived through it.
How did it get cold where you were at?
Oh gosh, yes. With the barracks, you know, we had cracks you could see outside in winter. When we had water buckets, the water froze inside. And there was no washing facilities or anything. But, you know,
Was it
roughing, we call it here, camping, you know.
What did you say?
okay?
And we had a stove, you know, a wood stove, and we had enough material to keep that stove going during the daytime. You know, it was hot, okay, but overnight it got so cold. Like I said, that the water froze in the water bucket. And I don't even remember that anybody really got sick, you know, from we survived.
Did you have to stay in the barracks, or did you ever go to the city of Linz?
Oh, mostly we stayed in the decks. We had some leaves, you know, for a couple of days. I went for leave, I think that 1 year I meant. I remember only once that I had a leave and I went back home to see my parents. Then I had to go again.
So, you said you replaced older soldiers when you arrived. Did you
Right.
ever? Did the older soldiers give you training, or did they just leave?
They just left. We never met them. I think they were just gone. They were pulled off and we had to replace them. They gave us a little bit of training, you know, until we're ready to go to the guns or to the place where we were stationed up. And that's where we still had training, you know, practicing like shooting.
What did you bring with you when you went to your guns? Did you bring anything from home? What did you bring with you when you went into the service? Was there anything you brought from home?
Nothing in particular, just the clothes you had on. And then we got the uniforms anyway, you know. Some old, they had a pile of shoes there, all mixed up, and we could go and pick them out. You could find shoes, you know, or boots. They didn't even fit together.
What uniforms did they
and
give you?
old uniforms.
They give you the wool ones, or
Yeah.
What?
Well, we actually had a uniform that was supposed to be your first uniform that was more like a Hitler Youth uniform. You know. We were different than from the old soldiers in the uniform. It was not like you got it on the picture here. Only the old ones, you know, they had that nice uniform.
So the quality of the uniforms you got was lacking? Bad?
No, it was good. It was warm and I didn't like it too much. But
Did you get a helmet?
yeah, we had helmets. but no guns. Rifle, like this.
Mhm.
And we did our best, so to say.
Do you have any stories from your time at the guns?
No, we had once a little difficulty. Something went wrong when we was shooting. It backfired or something, and the shell had a split, and another one I pulled off the gun. There was a flame coming back at him, and that hit him a little on the side, That's the only mishaps we had. I can't remember. There was something going wrong, but I don't really know exactly what.
And when you were at the guns, you guys were helpers. And did you guys have any other people that helped you?
Russians prisoners.
Really?
They carried the ammunition. They did the hard work. And those Russians prisoners, they were friendly. And we survived. They came on the barracks and they knocked on the windows for us and to have something to eat, And if we had something left over, we put it in a bucket all together and we gave it to them. And they made you some things they could make you up for a coin. They made you a nice ring, or they carved you a stick, to trade it. And there were stories I read. Those Russian soldiers, they kind of cooperated with the Germans. Like the Ukrainians, they were with the Germans. Mm-hmm. They supported the Germans during the war.
Was it all, so when you met the Russians, was it all pretty much the same people?
I didn't, no, you didn't know anybody, but, you didn't get much into contact with them. Only, like I say, they came in the window and they mentioned it, that we got something to eat, and we kind of helped them. But others, like Italians, they didn't come to communicate with us. They rather ate the dandelions and the things, and the patches, because there was no much food, we didn't have much. How could they feed the prisoners, So they had to survive through whatever we had. Could spare to give them away,
You said
at the end there was nothing anymore that we could give away either. We didn't have anything much to eat.
And you said there were Italian prisoners?
There was Italian prisoners too, and mostly Russians.
And did they help you guys at all, like the Russians, or did they just sit around?
We didn't. They had their separate lodgings. We didn't get in contact except when there was action going on. They came and carried the ammunition. These were big.
The prisoners, were they young? Were they old?
They were older guys. Like soldiers. Normal soldiers. They were Russian soldiers, just like German or English, American.
And how often did action happen?
At first, not too much. At the end, we had quite some action. And there was another, they recorded every flight when and we had to watch out for planes, to come and report them. And every bunker, north was number 12 and south was number 6. And we had a state guard every 4 hours, replace them and watch for planes, And if you spotted one, you had to report it. A plane, side number 12, and then everybody looked for the plane to make contact. There was a radar that was used at dark, at night. They were searching until they picked up a target, and then they got the measurements, that was done automatic to machines, to the guns, and we had to, line them up with measurements, and every 3 seconds we were supposed to shoot, and that was recorded. Every plane or target they picked up, there was another station. They had a big board, and there was a pen, and they had to do the same thing like on the guns to make those measurements, but there was a needle or pencil, and that marked that movement that the guns made, and they recorded the sight, the flight of the target, and then every 3 seconds there was that was usually the lieutenant or the observation station, who operated the radar or the telescope. There was at the daytime, when the weather was clear, they had a big telescope, and they had it through it, like the one that followed the speed and the direction and the distance. And the distance, there was a special guy, usually had a good vision. Like when you look through that binoculars, there was a mark in here, and that moved. When you turned, that mark, he could turn it. And he had to move that mark on the target. Like if you have a vision, you have to tell, the distance, how far you are away from the things, and until you lined it up, that mark. And then there was a firing bell. He pressed a button, and the bell was ringing on each gun for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3, and the guy had, when the bell stopped, they had to load it and pull it off. And that's what we were practicing. And the reason for that is that all 6 guns were supposed to shoot at the same time to make the action, then all the 6, from the 6 guns that exploded then in that area were supposed to be on the target, because practically definitely, actually, every shot was supposed to be a bullseye, but because of the distance and every little mistake makes a big difference before the gun gets up and explodes. So that's why we were practicing it. So that a lot of metal flies around up in here at the same time. It wasn't a bad action,
Did you
have a chance to.
Sorry. Did you train on every position? Did you know how to do every job?
Well, I knew how to be first guy that sideways, up and down. I never did the distance.
Which position did you like the most?
Either one or two side or up and down.
Did
Yeah, I told you, goddess.
did did you only see American planes, or did you also see German planes as well?
Well, Germans playing around too, but that's we had a little training too to recognize an enemy plane or a German own plane.
And how?
So we had pictures, you know, we had sessions, you know, where they showed us all those enemy planes, the Germans. I know quite a bit English planes, you know, that I know that were flying. The P-38, that was the Mustang, they called it. The Lightning, that was another one with the double fuselage.
And was it mainly English planes that you saw out there, or were there any others?
Oh, I never seen any close up. They were 30,000
Right.
feet up, you know. And only one time, that was to the end in the Linz area, we were on a hill and there came about 2 or 3 Mustangs in the valley. Just passed through. We looked down on them. You wouldn't even could have lowered that gun that low, you know, to shoot at them or anything. But they were just passing by. Could even see almost a pilot in it. They close to it. And we were supposed to shoot. We had a little bit rain, not too much of it. And low flying planes. You know, there was more the lowest guns, that not the heavier ones. The heavier guns, they were shooting mostly high flying targets and things. But we had training shooting on tanks. And, you know, that 88 gun they used in the War II and shooting at tanks. And we had a little practice of it. We had to go on a place, on a lake it was down somewhere. And there was a gun set up on a little bit of a hill. And then out on the flat parts, or down in Austria, somewhere. And they had stakes pulled in, and they took a cable out there, and they spun it around those posts, and they had a sled like hooked up on an electric motor that pulled those cables, and when they turned on the motor, that target, you know, it was a wooden, like a cardboard box that resembled a tank. And then they started, and it started to go this way, and then the cable went over that pole, and it made circles, you know. And we were at the gun, and there was no measurements or so. That was like just shooting a handgun. They just opened up the gun, and the firing, you know, the things. He looked through that thing, and he hollered to the number one guy, or to the thing, higher, 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 or lower, 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 and he had to turn it low until he seen the target through the barrel. Then he hollered fire, and then he had to shoot it and see if he. That was more difficult. But we had a little bit training on it once.
Did you ever see any planes go down?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I seen. There was whole groups flying, you know. And it was flying, and then once in a while you could see one, like you put a flash,
Lighter?
you know, a lighter, turn it on, you could see a little flame, and then you sheared out and passed down, settled down, and sometimes you could see white sparks when they jumped out, you know, things. But one time it was close to Linz too, and it was really very foggy, and we were shooting. No, we didn't even get to shoot, but one time they dropped a bomb. You know, when a bomb comes, you can hear them whistling. At first very slow, and they got louder and louder, and then it made a big boom. And one time, I don't know if we were shooting too or not. Anyway, we heard of one, like a bomb coming down, you know, but we didn't know what it was, because it was foggy, we couldn't see anything. But till noon, when the fog broke up, we could see a plane sitting close to where we were, and it was a Liberator, one of them bombers, and that was a bad thing. I could see that pilots were laying on the field, the plane was burning, and there was a arm sticking up. You could see on the bone thing in the plane, and it got me sick at that time. Ever since I hate wars, and it was a cruel thing. And one of my uncles, he came visit me in that thing, and he told me the war is lost, you know. Anyway.
Is that when he visited you at your station?
Yeah, but he was on the way back, and I don't know how he find out where I was stationed. It was a favorite uncle of mine. He was in his uniform. He was on the way back too, you know, from the front.
Do you?
And I don't know how he found out. He must have been in contact with my mother or somehow, and that he knew where I was stationed. But he came and he visited me. I was happy to see him. And he said, told me then that the war is over.
Do you remember what branch he was in?
Infantry.
Sure.
And what front was he on that he was coming back from?
Oh, he lived in the northern part of Czechoslovakia because my grandparents, my mother had 9 siblings. He had five brothers and 4, I think, or 9, I think. One, she had 10 children, I think, but one, I think she had a miscarriage, I think. But 9 were alive. And there was 5 boys and 4 girls. I had 4 aunts and 5 uncles. My wife's, my mother's siblings.
Interesting. You said you had a sister as well?
I had 2 sisters, 2 oldest, one older one, and
So
I was the youngest.
after you got home, what was it like in your town?
Well, like I said, I was supposed to recruit myself, but I didn't. And until the Americans came. First the Russians, all of a sudden we were at home. A car pulls up in front of my house, and they came in the house. There were some Russians officers. You know, I don't know what grade they were, but they were officers. And they sat with us, and they made themselves like if we at home, you know. And we thought they make their headquarters, you know, but they left again. And of course, my dad was shivering, you know. He was in the party in the Nazi parties.
What did your dad do during the war? Did he still work for the government?
My dad, no, he was on the railroad. All I can remember. Yeah, he was on the railroad under the Germans. He had a better position. Under Hitler, he got a better job. He was operating the switches. You know, he didn't have no laboring jobs.
Nice.
And he made a lot of money under Hitler. We could, you know, under the Czechs, they barely could make a living, my parents. They were kind of poor. Yeah.
So after the war ended, what was it like in your hometown with your family?
I wouldn't. It was normal. Oh, when, like I say, the Russians came first, and then somehow they made a deal that they made the railroad was there. Down the railroad that was Russians, the Russians pulled back over the railroad, and the Americans took this side of the country, you know. And that's where the Russians came first, but they pulled back across the railroad. That's where my uncles and parents were living. They were in the Russian zone, and we were in the American zone. You know, on this side, but they moved. There was no restriction yet. The Russians came over this way and went back, and back and forth. There was no real, you know, restriction. But the Russians came and they went back, and then the Americans came over, and that's where we got to meet the American soldiers. And my sister, they got a job in that little village, you know, where the Americans make their headquarters, and they needed some operator. They hired my younger sister to operate a switchboard because she knew a little English. I knew a little English too, what we learned in high school. But we didn't, you know, we thought we're never gonna have to use the English language anyway. But we knew a little bit. And so they hired my younger sister on a switchboard. And that's where she met a soldier. His name was William Lang. He was from South Carolina. And he was in the artillery. And he got to know each other. He brought my sister back home, and he took her to work, and they got acquainted to each other. And I got to know him too, you know. We were kind of friends.
Was he an officer?
No, he was a regular soldier, but nice guy. It was William. And he ate with us sometimes. My mother washed his clothes, ironed them, you know. And he got like a good friend. Anyway, it's, but oh yeah, well, the way I remember it, that he's gonna come for my sister after the wife. He has to come in a wheelchair. But you know, they wrote a few letters, but it then cooled off, and when he got up back, he got married, and my sister got another boyfriend. She got married to another guy.
Did you talk to any other Americans after him, or was he the only one?
I didn't.
Was he the only American soldier you talked with, or were there any others?
At William Lang.
Well, was he the only one that you talked with?
Pretty much. So we didn't get to know many other guys. They were in the village, and they were riding horses around and motorcycles, and they had some girlfriends too, you know. But we never got really close to more. But they had some horses to ride, and they rode motorcycles, all the girls around. But we were glad that the Russians, you know, we were afraid of the Russians more. We were lucky that the Americans, we appreciated, you know, every time from the East Front they tried to get captured from the Americans, get away from the Russians. Oh, well, my dad, we had a big scare one time when he worked under Czechs on the railroad. He went to work every morning and came back, things. And when the war was close to come, you know, the Czechs, they were afraid. They knew already Hitler's gonna come, you know, and they didn't let my dad